Hello, you're on the Ruslan Belov channel. Well, it's been 2 days since the attack on our strategic bases, since the explosion on the railway bridge that claimed lives. And did you see the response? I didn't. There is no response, but negotiations took place. Predictably, no serious decisions were made. However, there will be a prisoner exchange, the return of bodies, and the sides exchanged memorandums. By the way, in that memorandum, our demands remain the same. Withdrawal of the Ukrainian armed forces from the regions, limitation on the number of weapons and troops, neutrality, and so on. The battles continue, and we continue to study the situation at the front. Let's open the map. So, friends, regardless of what anyone says, the most important things are happening at the front. All these meetings, negotiations, drone strikes, they're secondary or even tertiary. What truly matters is where the Russian soldiers' foot is standing. And things are looking grim for the Ukrainian armed forces on the front, especially in Sumy Oblast, where collapse follows collapse. Over the past week, the area under Russian control in the region has nearly doubled. Look here, a week ago, this was the territory we held in Sumy Oblast. This area wasn't under our control back then. Nor this one, or this. All this territory was taken by our forces in just 1 week. You get the picture, the speed and scale of the Ukrainian collapse. They're simply retreating day by day, unable to stop the advance. Even the Ukrainian resource deep state posted a whole tearful message yesterday about how bad things are in Sumy Oblast. You can see how big chunks of land they're losing in just a single day. Yesterday, Telegram channels were already posting a long-distance photo of the city of Sumy taken by a Russian drone. The distance to the city has noticeably shrunk. So now let's talk more specifically about what's happened over the past 24 hours. On this sector of the front, we managed to advance 4 kilometers and 100 meters in the direction of the village of Andreevka. Moreover, our troops entered the village and secured positions on the northern outskirts, near farm buildings and the outermost houses. And right before recording this video, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that the village had come under full control of the Russian army. As a result, the situation for the Ukrainian armed forces in the nearby village of Kondratovka has significantly worsened. Now it is surrounded from 2 sides, north and east. There were reports that fighting is already happening inside the village, though I personally cannot confirm that yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's true. And as for those tearful videos where Ukrainian soldiers complain about how everything is falling apart and it's the end, yeah, I've posted some of that on my Telegram channel. So now the question is, what's the goal here beyond just taking Kondratovka? What's the main medium-term objective? I'll tell you, right now the main objective is to reach the urban-type settlement of Koten and the settlement of Pisarevka, both relatively large populated areas. They're currently under heavy artillery fire and drone strikes. Yesterday, I posted a drone image on my Telegram. It was flying right over Pisarevka. And you know what? In the background of the drone's camera shot, you can already see the city of Sumy. Given the current pace of advancement, 3 to 4 kilometers at a time, this is no longer some distant possibility. And we need to understand that they're losing ground not just here, not just near Pisarevka and Koten, but also further east, near the village of Yunakovka. Here's the area. Yesterday, we managed to advance from Loknya toward the village of Yablonevka. The progress was about 2 kilometers. And take a look at how the front line is shaping up here. 3 villages are now in a semi-encirclement: Novaya Nikolaevka, Vorochina, and Yablonevka. It's clear that the Ukrainian garrisons there are small and simply can't stop our advance. So I believe by the end of this week, we should expect the front to move along this line, the Alexiivka-Loknya line, and that would actually spell the end for Yunakovka, where heavy fighting is already underway. But as of now, the attack is only coming from one direction, from the north, from Loknya, and even attacking from only one side, we've already reached almost the center of the village. Fighting is currently happening near the church. If we start attacking from 2 directions, north and west, then Yunakovka will fall quickly. Overall, at this point, the city of Sumy is getting closer by the day. A month ago, it still seemed like a distant theoretical objective, something interesting to discuss, but not realistic. But in terms of distance, it's now just 18 kilometers in a straight line from our current positions to the regional center. You might think 18 kilometers is still quite a lot. But you know what it was a week ago? From these same positions, it was 27 kilometers. A week ago, 27 kilometers. Now, 18. Everything is changing, and it's changing fast. Well, let's move on to other sections of the front. Things aren't standing still there either. They're moving forward. Good news is coming from the Lyman direction. After Ukrainian forces were driven out of the village of Rydkodub, our troops didn't stop and continued advancing. You may remember that just a few reports ago, we were discussing where the next move might be. Right after Rydkodub came under our control, we considered several options, moving north toward Borova, south toward Lyman, or west toward the Oskil River to completely cut off the Ukrainian grouping. It looks like the decision has been made to move toward the Oskil. At least that's what the current advance suggests. So what happened? There was a breakthrough, 3 kilometers forward, reaching the village of Karpivka, securing its northeastern part, and, attention, crossing the Nitrius River. Our forces are now on the other side and have also established a foothold there. From this position, it's 11 kilometers to the Oskil River and the Oskil Reservoir. Although, in my opinion, they've already pushed too far ahead. You can see it, right? Already about 10 kilometers forward. Now it's necessary to consolidate the flanks, both from the north and the south. At the very least, we need to take control of the Green Valley and reach Chandriholov. That would make the position relatively stable and reduce the risk. In short, we'll be watching developments here closely. The main thing is that the front is moving here as well. And despite the fact that this sector is held by elite Ukrainian forces, including Azov units, they are failing to stabilize the situation. Let's move on. Over the past 24 hours, there has also been progress on a previously stagnant sector of the front. I'm talking about the Chasiv Yar area. There, our forces advanced 1.6 kilometers toward the village of Stupochki. Even though the Ministry of Defense officially announced the capture of the village a week or even a week and a half ago, we haven't seen the flag raised there yet. So we take that information with a grain of salt. What we can confirm is that real movement did occur. An area of 1.5 square kilometers has come under our control. Control of Stupochki is extremely important for advancing toward Kostiantynivka, because the road will then be under our control. But take a look at where Stupochki is located and consider the terrain. From above, it just looks like a simple village, but let's examine the elevation. Here you go. See? Now tell me, how can you hold a position here if, for example, you don't control the high ground to the west? You simply can't. You'd be like a target at a shooting range. The village lies in a depression, and it's surrounded by elevated terrain. Control over the village is only possible if all the surrounding heights are also secured. So, even though on paper the village is ours, and even American cartographers list it as a gray zone rather than fully controlled, we're going to be cautious and wait for video footage with a flag and clear visual confirmation. Only then can we talk about full and secure control of the village and start discussing further advances toward Kostiantynivka. Overall, on the rest of the front, there were only local changes of 100 to 200 meters. The total area that came under our control in the past 24 hours is 21 square kilometers, a typical May pace. That's all for now regarding today's midday update from the front. Let's now turn to political developments. Key provisions of the memorandum from the Russian Federation handed to the Ukrainian delegation during negotiations in Istanbul have appeared online. Here are the main points. The document consists of 3 sections, 2 ceasefire proposal formats, and 31 provisions. According to the first option, Kyiv must fully withdraw the armed forces of Ukraine from 4 regions. The complete withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from Russian territory must be completed within 30 days. After the ceasefire, Ukraine must adopt a status of neutrality. As part of the settlement, presidential and parliamentary elections are to be held no later than 100 days after the lifting of martial law, followed by the signing of a peace treaty. During the ceasefire, the redeployment of Ukrainian forces is prohibited, except for agreed withdrawals. Ukraine also agrees not to deploy or use nuclear weapons. All deliveries of Western arms and intelligence to Ukraine must cease. The peace treaty should be enshrined in a legally binding UN Security Council resolution. Kyiv must carry out an amnesty for political prisoners and release detained military and civilian personnel. A final settlement requires guarantees for the rights, freedoms, and interests of the Russian-speaking population. Both sides renounce mutual claims for damages caused by the hostilities. According to sources, no personal meeting between Vladimir Putin and Zelensky is expected anytime soon, reports the Telegram channel Secret Chancellery. The Kremlin wants a photo-op meeting only after a concrete peace agreement text and coordinated steps for settlement have been worked out. The Russian leadership does not want a repeat of Zelensky's February spat with Trump, turning negotiations into a media circus. The last round of consultations, which lasted about an hour, ended predictably, with formal memoranda and agreements of a humanitarian nature. They discussed exchanging severely wounded individuals and prisoners of war under the age of 25. However, Kyiv's initiative for a 30-day ceasefire was categorically rejected. Moscow has no plans to grant an operational pause to the Ukrainian armed forces, especially given the recent escalation by Ukraine with support from globalist circles. A partial ceasefire may be possible in isolated areas solely for the recovery of bodies. The exact date of the next round of talks remains unknown. Russia is currently satisfied with a strategy of attrition, ramping up pressure and formalizing the negotiating field, without yielding to Kyiv's diplomatic tricks. Karol Nawrocki is the new president of Poland. What does this mean for Ukrainians? A radical shift in policy is inevitable. So who is Nawrocki? He served as director of the Institute of National Remembrance from 2017 to 2025 and oversaw the removal of 23 Soviet war memorials. He is wanted in the Russian Federation for the destruction of military graves. He is anti-Russian in rhetoric, but also critical of Ukraine. Zelensky behaves unacceptably toward Poland. In return for our help, we got nothing. There are three major threats for Ukrainians in Poland. First, social benefits are at risk. Nawrocki openly demands the cancellation of allowances, the elimination of free housing programs, and the introduction of employment quotas. For example, in Rzeczpospolita on May 12, he said, "Poland is not a social paradise for migrants." Second, a tightening of immigration rules. The goal is to reduce the number of Ukrainians from 1 million to a necessary minimum. There are plans to reinstate the visa regime, which has been suspended since 2022. Deportation is demanded for the disloyal and for the unemployed who have stayed more than 3 months. Third, a rise in everyday xenophobia. Nawrocki's rhetoric legitimizes hatred. 57% of Poles support reducing assistance to Ukrainians. In 2024 alone, 214 attacks on Ukrainians have been recorded. Scenario: social collapse. Families who lose benefits will fall below the poverty line, especially those with many children. Shadow employment will surge. Employers will take advantage of migrants' vulnerability by paying under the table. Exodus to the EU. Up to 200,000 may move to Germany, the Czech Republic, or the Baltic states. Purges. Stricter checks on residence permits, fines for expired documents. Poland has chosen a radical. Nawrocki is using Ukrainians as a bargaining chip in his revolution against multiculturalism. Up to 1 million people, this isn't just statistics, these are lives he's willing to crush, said political analyst Jacek Krajewski. That's all for now. Thank you for watching and staying with us. We'll continue to monitor the situation and bring you timely updates from the front lines and the political scene. Take care, stay informed, and see you in the next report.